$1 billion. Let that sink in for a second. No other game in history has ever crowdfunded $1 billion, not even close. And the game that just crossed that milestone, it doesn't have a release date, doesn't have a final product, and is still in alpha. This weekend, Star Citizen officially crossed $1 billion in player funding, and there's a lot of mixed opinions on the internet. Some people are celebrating, some people are furious, and honestly, both sides have their justifications. Today, I'm going to talk about where all of this money comes from, why players keep giving in, how the public perception of the project has changed, and how it compares to another billion-dollar game that most players are waiting for. But before we start, I just wanted to say that I started a Discord server with the hopes of being able to better connect with my community outside of these videos. And I also wanted to say that only about 0.3% of viewers are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribing and turning on notifications really helps support the channel. Anyways, let's get into the video. So let's start with the basics of what actually happened to get to this point. On May 24th, 2026, the official Robert Space Industries funding tracker ticked past $1 billion. $1 billion raised almost entirely from players opening their wallets for over 14 years straight. The project started back in October 2012 when developer Chris Roberts, the guy behind Wing Commander and Freelancer, launched a Kickstarter asking for $500,000 to build a new space sim. The campaign absolutely exploded and ended up pulling in over $2 million, and that was just the beginning. Since then, the money has never stopped flowing. The project crossed $100 million in 2014, $500 million in September of 2022, and then hit $900 million just last December. So that means the last $100 million came in just 6 months, which shows that the pace of their funding is accelerating instead of slowing down. If you want to see a more in-depth look at the history of the project, I'd strongly suggest watching a previous video I made, which will be in the top right of the screen right now. 2025 was the biggest year in the game's history, pulling in somewhere around $152 million in a single year. November alone brought in over $32 million. And much of this latest surge happened during Drake DefenseCon, which is an in-game event that also came with a free-to-play period that let new players try the game without spending a dime. So right now, the tracker sits at over $1 billion raised with more than 6.5 million registered accounts. The question everyone's asking is, how is this still happening? Here's the part that really shocks some people hearing about the project for the first time, which is the funding model. Star Citizen doesn't sell loot boxes and doesn't have a battle pass. What it sells is ships. Virtual spaceships, and some of them cost more than a real used car. Want a starter package? That'll run you anywhere from $45 to $60, which is totally reasonable for a PC game. But if you want to go deeper into the game and buy better ships with real money instead of earning them in-game, which is a common misconception by people who are hearing about the game for the first time, the Pledge Store has ships ranging into the hundreds, even thousands of dollars. There's the Polaris for $975, the Kraken for $1,650, and the Javelin capital ship for $3,000. Those last two ships, the Kraken and Javelin, are currently not available for purchase since they are still not in the game yet. Which brings us to our next point. During this DefenseCon event that triggered the billion-dollar surge, Cloud Imperium Games unveiled a new ship, the Odin Battlecruiser, which is concept only and not yet in the game, but valued at nearly $6,000. These aren't randomized, so you do know exactly what you're buying, and to be clear, CIG says that all ships will eventually be earnable in-game once it fully launches. But right now, if you want that ship in your hangar during the alpha, you're paying real money for a digital asset in an unfinished game, where some of the ships are still yet to be added, like I talked about earlier. Historically, limited packages have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. The Legatus pack, which is a bundle of nearly every ship in the game, sold for $48,000 at one point, and people bought it. This is the driving force that built a billion-dollar game without a publisher. Love it or hate it, it works for funding a project this massive. So now we need to talk about both sides of the perception coin. Let's start with the believers, and there are a lot of them. First, the game itself is genuinely impressive in ways that are hard to argue with. Star Citizen currently does things that no other game does. Seamless planetary landings, you fly from space, enter atmosphere, land on a planet without a loading screen, fully walkable ship interiors, a persistent online universe where your ship stays in space when you log off, first-person missions, both boots on the ground and in space, multi-crew ships, and so on. It isn't vaporware because you can download it and play it right now. Defenders of the project are quick to point this out. No other space sim has pulled off this level of ambition in a playable state. Elite Dangerous is great, but it doesn't have ship interiors, at least not like Star Citizen does. No Man's Sky has come a long way, but it's a fundamentally different experience. Star Citizen is genuinely in its own category. The community side is also massive and deeply passionate. Cloud Imperium Games runs something called Bar Citizens, which are community meetups organized by fans held all over the world. Over 300 of these happen every year. One of CIG's co-founders, Sandy Roberts, recently described coming back from one in Asia that had thousands of attendees. So this isn't just a community waiting for a game, but it's a community living inside one. It's also worth noting that I've seen a surprising amount of Star Citizen content on platforms I don't ever see it on. I've seen Star Citizen edits on Instagram. I've seen more people live streaming it and talking about it in a positive light than I've ever seen before. So there is a lot more people diving into the game and trying it out to see for themselves if it's worth all of this money that's been put into it. And it's also good to keep in mind that this $1 billion hasn't just been funding Star Citizen. CIG has been simultaneously developing Squadron 42 as a completely separate, standalone single-player campaign. 2 full games at the same time. Whether you think that's ambitious or reckless probably depends on which side of this debate you're already on. The cast for Squadron 42 alone looks like a list of attendees at the Oscars. You have Mark Hamill, Gary Oldman, Gillian Anderson, Henry Cavill, Andy Serkis, Ben Mendelsohn, Mark Strong, and more. It's targeting a 2026 release, and if it launches and delivers, it could completely change the conversation around CIG as a studio. The supporters also argue that the open development model where CIG shows its work, shares roadmaps, does live shows, and actively responds to the community makes this unlike any other gaming project in history. So you're not just buying a game, but you're funding a dream in real time. Now, let's be honest about the other side, because there is a very large, very loud, very legitimate set of criticisms surrounding this project. The game was announced in 2012 with a planned launch for 2014. It is now 2026. The game still does not have a release date. That is the central problem, and nothing else really escapes its shadow. Critics, and there are plenty of them, have a list of grievances that has only grown over the years. Scope creep is a big one. What started as a focused space sim has ballooned into a sprawling universe with features that keep getting added to the roadmap before existing ones are finished. Every time CIG promises a timeline, it seems to slip. Every time a major feature is almost done, something else gets pushed. Some critics also argue that splitting development between 2 massive titles is exactly why neither one has shipped after 14 years. The monetization model, while entirely optional, draws serious fire. When you're selling a $6,000 concept ship for a game that isn't finished, that's hard to defend to the outside world. When a $600 ship like the Ironclad doesn't even function correctly in the current build, and CIG is simultaneously selling concept ships worth 10 times that, people understandably get angry. Forum threads erupted recently when players complained that CIG's funding priorities seem backwards. Then there's the ongoing bug problem. Players still report performance issues in cities, elevator glitches, character clipping through floors, server crashes. This is an alpha, defenders will say, and they're not wrong. But when the game is actively being sold to new players at $45 and ships are being marketed like luxury goods, the "it's just an alpha" defense starts to wear thin. The broader gaming public has largely settled on a nickname, Scam Citizen. Reddit threads, gaming forums, and social media are full of people calling it the longest running con in gaming history. One Reddit commenter summed up the skeptic view bluntly: at some point, CIG may have realized they make more money not finishing the game than finishing it. The last point is the darkest version of the criticism, that the business model has accidentally become self-defeating. A released game stops generating hype, a perpetual alpha with monthly ship sales, that keeps the money flowing indefinitely. Whether that's intentional or just an unfortunate side effect of how this all evolved, it's a question that deserves to be asked. The reaction to the $1 billion milestone has been almost perfectly split. The Star Citizen subreddit and RSI community forums have had a lot of celebration. Longtime backers are sharing screenshots of their pledge histories, some dating back to 2012. There's genuine pride in the community about what they've built, and a sense that crossing $1 billion validates the project in some meaningful way. But outside of the community, the response has been much colder. Gaming news coverage has been largely framed around disbelief, and "it's still an alpha" is showing up in nearly every headline. Casual gaming communities have responded with a mix of confusion and mockery. The Scam Citizen meme has been revived once again with full force. Here's the interesting thing though. The milestone might actually be shifting public perception in one specific way. There's a growing acknowledgement, even among skeptics, that Cloud Imperium Games has done something genuinely unprecedented. Whether you think Star Citizen is a masterpiece in progress or the gaming industry's biggest grift, you cannot deny that getting over 6 million people to collectively hand over $1 billion for an unfinished game is a remarkable achievement in itself. The debate is no longer really about whether the game exists, because it does. It's playable, it has content, but the debate is about whether it will ever reach a finished state, and what finished even means for a game like this. Now, let's put this in context, because the numbers only really mean something when you compare them. Grand Theft Auto 6, probably the most anticipated game in history by Rockstar Games, had it confirmed by Take-Two Interactive in their earnings call that GTA 6's development costs have exceeded $1 billion, making it officially, alongside Star Citizen, one of only 2 games in history confirmed to have crossed that threshold. Some leaks suggest the real number could be closer to $2 billion when all is said and done. But even the confirmed figure is staggering. Here's the key difference. GTA 6 is a product from one of the largest and most proven studios in gaming history. Rockstar has GTA 5, which has sold over 215 million copies. GTA 5 is still one of the top-selling games on Steam more than a decade after launch, and Take-Two has billions in revenue, institutional investors, a publicly traded stock, and a publisher relationship that guarantees the infrastructure for this game to actually ship. Star Citizen is funded by its players. There is no publisher, there is no backup plan. If CIG runs out of money, there is no safety net. The whole thing lives and dies by the pledge store. Yes, CIG has received some outside funding from other corporate entities, but nothing as close to what the community has given. GTA 6 also has a release date, or had one. May 26th, 2026, which is today as of the making of this video, was the target. Meanwhile, Star Citizen has never had a final release date in 14 years of development. But here's where the comparison gets genuinely interesting. GTA 6, with all of Rockstar's power and polish and marketing, is expected to be a linear narrative experience, an incredible one, but a known quantity in a familiar format. Star Citizen, if it ever delivers on its promises, would be something entirely new. A living, breathing, persistent universe where you can do anything. No game has ever actually pulled that off at this scale. So are you more impressed by a $1 billion game from the most powerful studio in the industry that will almost certainly be incredible, or a $1 billion game from essentially an indie studio with no publisher, funded entirely by players that may or may not ever actually come out? That's the choice that splits the gaming community right down the middle. There are a few other comparisons worth mentioning too. Monopoly Go, yes, the mobile game, reportedly spent over $1 billion, but the bulk of that was marketing, not development. Genshin Impact has burned through enormous ongoing costs to sustain its live service model. Cyberpunk 2077 cost around $330 million including marketing, and each new Call of Duty game may be in the $1 billion range when factoring in marketing. Star Citizen stands alone because its $1 billion came directly from players. No ads, no publisher advances, almost no corporate money, just backers who believed and in some cases still hope for the success of the project. So what comes next? In the short term, the big watch item is Squadron 42. This is the single-player cinematic campaign that CIG has been promising for years. It has the cast, it has the technology, and it currently has a 2026 release window. If Squadron 42 ships this year, and is even halfway as good as it looks, it would be a massive legitimizing moment for Cloud Imperium Games. It would prove the studio can actually finish something, and it could bring in an entirely new audience who want a finished, premium product before trusting the live game. For Star Citizen itself, the core technical goals are becoming clear. Server meshing technology, the backbone of a truly persistent universe with thousands of players sharing space, has been in development for years and is actively being tested. This is the piece that needs to work before the game can ever really claim to be finished. Early reports from testing have been cautiously optimistic. The funding isn't slowing down. If anything, the $1 billion milestone has generated a fresh wave of attention, including a free-to-play event that just finished up that let anyone download and play without buying anything. Every new player who tries it and enjoys it is a potential backer. The critical question remains, is this a game that's being built slowly but sincerely, or is it a game where development has become the product and the finish line keeps moving by design? Honestly, nobody outside of CIG knows for sure, and that uncertainty is a huge part of why the gaming world keeps watching. $1 billion, 14 years, still no release date, still in alpha, and still somehow growing. Star Citizen is the most controversial project in gaming history, not because it's obviously a scam or not because it's obviously going to be one of the greatest games of all time. It's controversial because nobody knows which one of those two it is, and that ambiguity has sustained it for over a decade. What we know for sure is the game is real. It's playable and it does things that no other game does. The community is real and their passion is real. The money is very, very real. What we don't know is whether the finish line is real, or when it may be. If Squadron 42 launches this year and delivers, it's going to be a massive moment. If it slips again, the narrative gets a little bit darker, and if Star Citizen itself ever hits 1.0 with everything it's promised, well, that would be one of the greatest achievements in the history of entertainment. Until then, we wait, and apparently, we pay. Are you a backer? Are you a skeptic? Somewhere in between? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, if you're interested in trying the game out for yourself, you can check out the link in the description down below to get an extra 50,000 UEC in-game. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future uploads. And I'll see you guys in the next one.